Got a 2012 Nissan Altima with a 4-cylinder. Came in on the hook. Overheating. Antifreeze all over the floor. That's what the owner said. So just checked the system. The system was empty. And she said she did not drive it once it started to overheat, so that's a good thing. And let's try to figure out where this antifreeze is going. Now looking underneath the car, you can see everything is wet down here. Specifically like near the timing cover. The radiator is a little bit wet, but I think that's just from whatever was splashing around off of the belt. One thing I did notice is on the water pump right here. Look at this. Let's get a good shot of this. And look on the alternator. Alright, I think I'm gonna remove the belt. Okay, so right there, that's the bottom. It's the rear bottom of the water pump. And it's kind of hard to tell, but right behind that pulley, you can see dried up coolant and witness marks of where it's been leaking from. Pretty confident that that's gonna be our problem. One other thing is all the engine mounts on this thing are just destroyed. You can see how that one's torn right there. This one's kind of hard to tell, but I guarantee you it's no good. And then the transmission mount, the one that's going like to the subframe to the engine, not transmission, from the subframe to the engine, that one's also destroyed. So yeah. Initially, the way the woman described it, I thought she had like a major blowout. There was coolant everywhere. So I was expecting to fill up the system, and just by pressurizing it, we should see a relatively large leak somewhere. But that's just not the case. What's really going on here is her water pump has been seeping out coolant little by little, and over time it just got to the point where the coolant level was just so low that the engine began to overheat. So that's what's going on here. It wasn't some catastrophic failure or anything like that. It's just a slow leaking water pump. So that's my call. We're gonna go ahead and change this water pump, hopefully see what the customer says. So we got in the zone, AutoZone, not a sponsor. We got some new parts here. We got a belt and a water pump. So let's go ahead and start taking this stuff apart. Just decided to pull the new part out the box and check it. I tried to move the actual pulley, and it's nice and solid. We don't have that little bit of play like we do on the old one. So it feels pretty good. Hopefully it lasts. I'm actually surprised at how small of a water pump this thing is. So, I mean, that's a real tiny one. As you can see, I got the old water pump out, and you can see these witness marks very clearly. This thing has been leaking for a while. As you can see, I got the new pump installed. One thing that impressed me is it actually came with a steel gasket, just like the OEM water pump did. It was none of that paper gasket crap. So that was really nice to see. Everything's already all tightened down. And what I'm actually going to do is, before I start putting everything back together, I'm just going to fill up the cooling system with some actual antifreeze this time and pressurize the system and see how it goes. If there aren't any leaks and everything looks good, then go forward with putting everything back together. So I pretty much let this thing sit overnight holding pressure, and we did drop a little bit of pressure, not much. But when I came back this morning, see if this picks up, see that tiny little puddle right there on top of the new water pump. So unfortunately, I have to pull the water pump back off. Let's see what's going on. Both of the surfaces look perfectly flat and clean. So I'm gonna have to see. I might have to apply a little bit of thermostat silicone on there, because that's unacceptable. That's a small drip, and eventually she'll be right back in the same boat if we don't get it fixed right now. There has to be no leaks at all. Okay, so I cleaned up both of the surfaces. Use brake parts cleaner, make sure everything is perfectly dry and clean. And I put a very thin layer of silicone made for water pumps on both sides of that gasket. And if you look closely, you can see the squeeze out that we have is very minor, and that's what you want to see. It looks perfect to squeeze out all the way around. You don't want to see all this silicone oozing out as you tighten it down. That indicates you put way too much, and then it's going to make its way into the cooling system, and that's not good. So I'm pretty confident that this is now going to seal. Sometimes it's just minor imperfections in one of the surfaces, or let's just say the gasket isn't 100%, and you get tiny little leaks like that. It is what it is. It's not too bad of a job, but you know, the important thing is you didn't put everything back together. That's where the pressure tester really comes in hand. Everything is pretty much installed. Got the new serpentine belt put on it. Filling up the cooling system right now. Already pressure tested it. Seems to be okay. Obviously it's not a long-term test. It was just an initial pressure test. But I got a lot more confidence that that's going to seal right now since we have a thin layer of silicone on it. But I noticed this right here. It looks pretty bad. So before I actually connect the negative terminal, I'm just going to go ahead and clean this up before I button everything up here. I've had the car running for about 20-30 minutes. Bled out the cooling system, got all the air out. We got good heat blowing out the dash. There aren't any leaks. Check the water pump with my mirror the best I can. I don't see any leaks. Everything looks good. The car needs a ton of other work. For example, look at this. All that stuff is leaking oil like crazy. And I know a friend that works on cars, and he told her about this back in April, and you know, he just, or she doesn't care. Car is pretty much a turd. Look at this door smashed in. The driver side mirror completely cracked, not cracked, just smashed up. The car doesn't sound great while driving. Suspension sounds messed up. It's just one of those cars that, you know, I can make a laundry list of parts that are bad, and you'll never see it again because it's not going to come back to get fixed. Here I've got a Volkswagen Jetta with the 2.0, and it's got a code for cooling system performance. Owner says that the engine doesn't really, you don't get warm air blowing out into the cabin. Engine takes forever to warm up, so sounds like a stuck open thermostat. So here I got the old thermostat out of the car, and it's hard to see, but it actually is stuck open. Let's see if we could get a light from the back side. There it goes right there. You can see the light coming through. And before I pulled it off the block, I could see coolant pouring right out of there. So it was not leaking past the gasket. It was leaking right there, right where the thermostat opens up. Another issue that I've had last time when I was doing the thermostat the first time is that the O-ring or the gasket that you get from AutoZone doesn't work. I remember I put it on, filled up the system, and we had a leak. I had to take it all back apart again, make sure I didn't pinch the gasket or the O-ring or something like that right. Put it back together, it leaked again. The third time, I just reused the original O-ring, and it sealed up the very first time. So once again, instead of bothering, because he did bring another one from AutoZone, instead of bothering with the O-ring from AutoZone, I'm just going to reuse the original one. Now sure, I wish I had a brand new one from the dealer, but I don't. And honestly, I'm not even going to waste my time on that AutoZone part and go through the headaches like I did the first time. This O-ring seems to be in decent shape still, so I'm just going to reuse it. At least I know it should work. I'm hoping it should work. Alright, so here's a new thermostat. And for the most part, it looks like it's sealing. I see a little bit of light down there. See it? It's only down there. Uh-oh. Hopefully this one seals, because it's the only one we have. This is why I recommend OEM parts. Well, let's cross our fingers. We are in a Grand Cherokee. One thing it's being dropped off for is brakes. You hear that? Oh yeah, it's metal on metal. Not sure if it's coming from the front or the back just yet. Another thing is she keeps losing coolant. She has to keep adding coolant, so I have to find out where this leak is at. And one more thing, she said if I get on the, sorry for the dirty camera, I could see how blurry it looks, but she said if you get on the expressway with the car, the front end just wobbles like crazy, like death wobble. But just driving very slowly around the block here, I could feel there's something wrong with this alignment, the suspension, something. It's just, there's like a 3-inch play in the steering wheel that equates nothing at the wheels. Just as I suspected, it's going to be the rear brakes that are grinding, because the front brakes got done not too long ago. And it's hard to see back there with the mirror, but just looking at the rim, we could see all the metal shavings that are built up right there. You can see the metal shavings, how they've already like rusted. So it's definitely the rear brakes. I'm gonna see if we could get a rotor for this. Obviously it needs a rotor. Just looking things over, one thing I noticed is right on top of the water pump, you can already see residue of like dried up coolant right there. So I have not checked the system to see if it's filled right now. I'll wait for it to cool off a little bit before I pressure test it. But that right there is just something I noticed. Alright, so this time I decided to play it safe and do the smart thing. Check the parts before I take anything apart. And of course we got the wrong pads. We got pads that look like they go on the front of the vehicle. I told the owner most likely it's going to be the rear brakes, because we just did the front brakes not too long ago. And still got the wrong parts. So all I did was take the wheel off. I'll probably just put a jack stand underneath it to hold it up and let it sit here until I get the correct parts. Let's try to get a rotor for the left side of the car. Okay, so it's been some time. I got caught up with some other things watching Star Wars, but finally got this on here. It's been on here for about 20 minutes and I got it exactly up to the 15 psi mark. And as you can see, like within these 20 minutes, you can see how much it's dropped. And honestly, I don't see any leaks on the engine. There's nothing coming out from right there. I don't see anything dripping. I don't know, maybe the engine needs to be warmed up in order for it to start showing its leak somewhere out here. I don't know. Or maybe it's an internal leak somewhere. But I'll leave this pressure tester on here and we'll see where it goes. Okay, so it's starting to get dark out here, but I got my headlamp on, so we're all good. The right side of the truck got new brake pads, and on the left side, as you can see, we did get a new rotor and pads here. Everything went pretty easy. The only thing I didn't like is that everything was pretty much loose on both sides, like the caliper bolts and then the main bolts that hold the bracket to the knuckle. Everything was loose. It's crazy. But it's all taken care of now. And go ahead and put the wheel back on it and the brakes are all set. Almost forgot to show you guys. So here goes the pad. It was causing all the noise, and you can see the rotor all chewed up. It's been maybe another 30 minutes. And as you can see, it's not dropping much. And I still don't see any drips on the ground. So at this point, I still don't know where this very small leak is at. As you can see, I've created quite a mess here. So I had the pressure tester on it, and once I was done with the brakes, I turned the car on so I could move it back and forth and make sure the brakes are okay. And then it was only on for a few seconds. And then I came out here, I started to relieve the pressure by pushing this little valve right here. And I noticed that coolant was starting to come out of this release valve. So like, oh, that's not good. So I just removed it as fast as I could, and we had a stream of coolant just shooting out of here. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my no spill funnel. Yes, the irony in that. I'm gonna put the no spill funnel on here and top off the coolant, try to clean whatever I can. But I want to see if we get bubbles or air coming out of the cooling system. Okay, so occasionally we'll get bubbles out of here, but nothing concerning. I think it's just the cooling system bleeding out. But there's no constant stream of bubbles, you know, indicating we might have like a head gasket leak or anything. I'm not saying we don't, I'm just saying it's not looking like it just based off of looking at the coolants. Here I have a 2015 Kia Sorento, and cannot express enough of how nice it is to once in a while work on a newer vehicle. Nothing fights you, everything comes apart how it should. It's a real treat when I get newer cars. Just gonna go ahead and get these rear brake pads and front brake pads done today. Alright, so I forgot that I'm completely changing the front stabilizer links on this vehicle as well. Both of the stabilizer links are disconnected from the strut, so the same thing on the other side. At this point, I would think the sway bar is able to move freely, but it doesn't. It's very stiff. I can't get it to move up or down, almost like it has preload on it. But there's nothing holding this sway bar other than the bushings right there. Normally, they just move. This one is stuck solid. And just to show you, on this side, it's disconnected as well. But I cannot get this bar to move. It's like rock solid. Alright, so I am prying on the sway bar with my pry bar just to try to get this to go low enough to line up. And it is fighting, and as I push down on the sway bar, I could see that whole bushing just twisting inside of there. So yeah, that thing has got to be seized. It can't be like that. So I think that's why these stabilizer links are wearing out so prematurely. So I think that's going to be the next thing on the list, is to replace those bushings. You know, this is the type of stuff that I see from Volkswagen or just German cars in general, and to me it's ingenious. It just makes servicing things like this really easy, you know. But like any other car, there's give and takes, right? Some things are good, some things are bad. But I thought that was pretty neat. She told me to look it over. It's also going to need a brake fluid flush. All the fluid is completely black. Needs front stabilizer links and a front left strut. It's blowing out. I could hear it clunking around. But well, let's see if I find anything when I turn to the back, because she said she's having issues with her tire just wearing down extremely fast. I'm on the left rear side of this Volkswagen. Now she has a new tire put on because her old one was so worn down that the metal wire was actually hanging out of it. So she stopped at like a little corner, you know, cheapo tire shop and just had this used tire put on. But the tire's no good. In fact, the car needs tires all the way around. But you know, there's plenty of tread left on it. It still looks like it has plenty of life. But the thing is, the tire itself is actually deformed. So if you focus on the shock back there, let's try to keep this. I'm gonna go ahead and spin the wheel. See how it's going up and down? Now don't let that wet spot on tire throw you off. It's not that. It really is the tire moving up and down. Alright, so obviously I'm going to need the car. And if you look at the tire on the right side of the car, you can see how it's starting to go bald, especially on the inside here. Now one thing I noticed on both lower control arms is that those bushings right there, they're not really centered. It's like the control arm is sagging down, making the pivot point like really towards the top. And I tried prying on it, and they both move relatively easy. So if I had to make a call here, I would say that's the reason why the tires are ending up like this. It's because the bushings on the control arm are worn out. It's causing too much negative camber. That's why the inside of the tire is wearing out like that. And if you look right up there, you can see how that shock is wet. So either the bushings need to get replaced or the whole control arm needs to get replaced, and replace both of the shocks. And this is one of those cars where we have to use a scanner to release the parking brake back here. So let's see, open rear brake calipers, right? Alright, pretty much all done here. New rotor, new pads. Just did what I had to do. Alright, so let's see. And that's it. Now it's time to do the brakes on the right side of the car. I got the tire off, and you could already see there's a weird shape to the tire. See, it's like it's concave right in the center. And if you look towards the outside or the inside of the tire, you can see how it's very, very worn down. So this car needs new tires all the way around. I've got a Mitsubishi Outlander here, and the owner suspects it's got a bad wheel bearing. She said the one on the front left side was changed already, maybe like a year ago. So she says it has to be the front right side, and she said it sounds like it's coming from this side anyway. So first of all, I don't feel any play in the bearing. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But the first thing I noticed is, look at this tire. This thing is a racing slick. There's absolutely nothing left on it. And look at this right here. Turn off my lights here, okay. That is, I don't want to stab myself, but I'm sure you could see that. Look at this. This tire is just ready to burst. So before we go changing the wheel bearings, I'm going to suggest she gets this tire fixed. And here goes the tire that's on the driver's side, so you can see it's pretty much done for too. Owner wants me to put the spare tire on, so it's underneath the car. And I had trouble trying to figure out how to get to this bolt, and it's actually right here. You got to drop this like tailgate down. And the fun part about it is that the hatch doesn't stay up because the struts are blown out. It's fun, right? Dealing with crap like this. Yes, it's dark out here. Oh, joys, joys, joys. As you can see, I got the spare out, but look what problem we ran into. So here's the cap, right? I tried unscrewing it, and it just kept spinning forever. So I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Are you kidding me? Jesus, we can't even use this. Big whole waste of time. Junk, that's what this car is. Garbage. Alright, there's nothing more I could do. It's just gonna put the spare back underneath the car, tell them come pick it up, and take it ASAP so we get a new tire or tires put on it. Well, let's see what happens. I don't know. Whatever. We are back with this Subaru Tribeca. It's maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I initially looked at it. For like, I don't know, first week or so after I left here. The owner was still driving it despite me telling her not to. Eventually all the coolant leaked out again, started overheating, and she kept driving it, saying she's gonna pull over every time it heats up. I told her, no, just stop driving your car. For the love of God, just stop. It's already dead. I finally convinced her to stop driving it after like a week. So anyway, it's back here, and we have a new part, which is this one right here. It's gonna be replacing, where am I? Okay, this part. The only thing that sucks is that before I could not see this pipe right here. See how rusty and nasty it is? The reason I couldn't see it is because last time I was here, it had that giant cover on the bottom of the car. So the only thing I could see was this pipe right here. I mean, I don't think it's leaking yet, but clearly it's on its way out. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of the one that's actually leaking right now, and I'm gonna tell her about this and try to be proactive about it instead of waiting till it turns into a problem. Let's see. Yeah, this thing's pretty bad. Look at that. It's crazy. It's like paper thin. This has got to be the weirdest thing I've seen on a steering wheel. It's like two balls. This is so weird. I don't know, but I could get used to this. I think I need one for my car. Got a Chevy Cobalt here, and it's here because it doesn't want to release the key, and the owner said it doesn't always register that it's in park. Okay, but I go to plug in my scanner and there's no power to DLC, so I come up front and look what I find. I guess there was an issue with the ground on this, so someone ran a ground to it, but I mean, they did the crappiest job ever. Look at that. If you're gonna fix it right. I don't know, whatever, not my problem. Alright, so I pretty much figured out what's going on with this Cobalt. I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate it. It's not going to let the key go because I have it in gear. But once you turn the key off, it will not let go of the key. Okay, it just doesn't want to. Sure, there's a switch down here to release it, but that's super annoying. You know, you want this thing to work how it's supposed to. So let me show you what I found. First of all, before I took all this apart, pulling the car, and the first thing I noticed is every gear seems to move just fine, except for when you go to put it in park, okay? When you go to put it in park, it's like there's something fighting you and it doesn't want to go into park, alright? What I found is if you put all this stuff back together how it's supposed to be, basically this little piece of rubber is supposed to go inside of this track right here. Let me show you. There's a little track and it goes right inside of there. So you can imagine how that piece of rubber is supposed to move back and forth as you go through the gears, right? But what's going on here is from over the years of people dropping soda, just whatever beverages in this area, because all this stuff is wet and sticky. So it's just accumulated over the years, right? But what's going on here is this piece of rubber doesn't move anymore like it should. So by the time you go to get it into park, it's all just bunching up right here like this, and it doesn't let you get into park 100%. So that's problem number one. The second problem is, let me go ahead and get this out the way. Sorry, bear with me. Second problem has to do with the switch right here. So here goes the little switch right here, and it's actually what releases the key. And as I press it, you could hear it releasing the key. Okay, so what I found to be another problem here is, now there's nothing wrong with the switch or the wiring, okay? Let's look at this carefully as I move the shifter. Try to go into park. See right there, it's pressing the switch, so I did hear it release. It did release the key. But let's keep messing with it. Look what happened right there. The switch has essentially moved over to the side where that little metal arm is no longer coming in contact with it. At that point, it's not going to release this key. So we're in park right now. Let's try to release the key. And look, it won't let it go. But if we come here and mess with this, okay, right there, it grabbed on. It should release the key now. There you go. So two problems. Let's see what I could do to try to remedy this. Okay, so here's my little quick fix. Basically, here goes a little bracket, and the bracket holds the switch, okay? And then the bracket itself just kind of pops right into the side of this housing. It doesn't look worn out or anything, everything looks perfectly fine, yet there's a lot of play in this, and this is actually where the play is coming from, because it actually holds the switch nice and sturdy and it doesn't move around inside of here, but the whole bracket itself is what flexes. So all I'm going to do is real quick, got a confirmation from the owner, I'm just going to go ahead and JB weld this little bracket onto the housing so the bracket itself doesn't move. And in that case, or with it being like that, if this switch were to ever go bad, the switch could still be replaced because it is still... We're good, I found it. Okay, so basically the switch could still get replaced if it were to go bad because it is still pop out the bracket. But the bracket where all the play is at, we're gonna mount it so it'll be nice and sturdy with the JB weld. Pretty much done here. As you can see, everything is put back together. I actually tried to clean this up. I took it inside the house and cleaned any crud off of here, and as you can see, the little rubber thing that goes inside of here, ditched it. It doesn't work and it's already destroyed, so it's gonna have to do without it. But turns on, shifts gears, goes into park just fine, no problem, and releases the key. So that's it for this one. Here I have a 2001 Monte Carlo, and it just got dropped off because it's overheating. So the woman said it's been to 2 different mechanic shops, and the last one it was at replaced the radiator because they said there was a lot of gunk and stuff inside of the radiator. She said the other shop checked the cooling fans and she said the fans are fine, so it's got a new radiator. So she just picked it up from another shop, so which means tell me this radiator hasn't been on here very long. You can already see the cap that's the crap that's built up on the cap. I don't know if there's an original cap, but it looks pretty new to me, so I'm gonna assume it came brand new with the radiator. And let's see if we can have a look inside of here. First off, I noticed the cooling system is not completely topped off. And we could already see junk building up inside of here, even though the radiator itself is pretty much brand new. And it smells weird, like it almost smells like gasoline inside of there. So I don't know, let's see if we can figure out something. Figure we could go ahead and check codes first. Alrighty then. What the heck? Okay, so here goes our codes. First one is the ECT, below thermostat regulating temperature. We have oxygen sensor, not worried about that. Misfire, not worried about that. EVAS system, nope. Engine oil pressures, nope. Alright, so the only code that pertains to kind of what we're messing with right now is the first one. I have my no spill funnel on, and I just added just a tiny little bit of water just to top it off right there, as you can see. And what I'm doing with this is I want to see, once I start up the engine, we're going to see if we see any bubbles coming out of here. Okay, so I'm expecting that to stop after a little while. Let's see what happens. Okay, so while we wait for this, let me tell you something. The shop that put the radiator in, right, when the woman came to pick up the car, it was still overheating and blah blah blah, right? And the shop told her, oh, the system needs to be bled, that's why. And then they sent her on her way. Who the hell does that? Who puts a radiator in a car and then doesn't bleed the system? I think what's really going on here is they made a bad call on the radiator, so they put the radiator in the car. They found out the car is still overheating. And what's the easiest thing to tell someone to send them on their way? Oh, the cooling system needs to be bled, that's it. It's kind of like you pay someone to do your brakes and they disconnected the brake line, right? And they didn't bleed the system, so now your brakes don't work, and they say, hey, come pick up your car is ready, the new rotors and pads are on, right? but your brakes don't work, and they tell you, oh, you gotta bleed the system, you gotta bleed the brake lines. Well, isn't that part of the job of doing my brakes? You know, if a brake line was bad or something, it just makes no damn sense. So I think that's what's going on here. I think there's a much bigger problem going on here, and they just made the wrong call, so they had to make up an excuse of why it's still overheating, and they told her, oh, it just needs to be bled. Oh, does your shop not do this? Because from now on, I will take my car somewhere else if your shop cannot bleed a cooling system. Sorry, now I know I'm just ranting, but I just had to get that out. Anyway, I checked my timer because I set a timer since I turned on the car. It's been 5 minutes, okay? And look at this. It is still doing that after 5 minutes. Now here's the thing with air pockets. Okay, if there's an air pocket in the system and the bubbles are, coming up and it's releasing the air, well, usually that fluid level is going to keep dropping because the fluid takes up the space of where we had air pockets, right? But that's not the case here. The level is not dropping. It's been exactly in the same place that I started with, but yet we're getting all this air coming out the system. Look at that. So I could be here for another 10-15 minutes. It's going to keep doing this, and the fluid level is never going to drop. I think this thing has a blown head gasket. Whenever I get out of a running car, I like to put the window down. But this one clearly does not work. I could hear the motor and like the cable moving inside of there, but the window does not move, and it just does not sound happy. So don't touch it, leave it alone. I got a big mess here. I tried to remotely crank the engine over just so I could do a relative compression test, and the starter only like turned over like once or twice, and it just shot all the fluid out of here. It actually wet my scope, so I had to try to clean it up as best as I can, so that's not good. But yeah, that's also a bad sign, that the second the engine starts to crank and create compression, it just like a water fountain stream just came out of here, just shot out. So just to show you guys what I'm talking about, I'm gonna go ahead and crank the engine. Tell me if this is normal. Yeah. We already know what's going on here. We know what the problem is. Okay, so that Monte Carlo blown head gasket, right? I get in touch with the woman. She said she would pick it up tomorrow morning. It's now tomorrow morning. Alright, so I get a text today saying, hey, I'm on my way to pick up the car. I said, okay, that's fine. Can you send me a text with your name, your make, model of your vehicle for my records, because I keep track of all this stuff, right? And I never got a reply. In case you're wondering why I don't have her name already, well, when we initially spoke about her car, she said she got my number through one of her friends that I previously worked on their car before, okay? And it just never came up. So anyway, she gets here, right? She hands me the money. It's in her hand like this. Already balled up, no counting or anything. She hands me the money, and at this point, I already knew what was going on, okay? So I put the money in my pocket. I give her the key. She starts walking away. And I told her, hey, by the way, I sent you a text, asking for your name, your make, model of your vehicle for my records. And she goes, yeah, I saw your text. She goes, I'm going to reply to you later. Okay, so I get in the house, count the money, and it's $25 short of what I quoted her to diagnose her vehicle. And there was no miscommunication because we went over the price at least 2 or 3 times. All right. I'm not really concerned about the $25. It's just a measly $25. It doesn't mean anything to me. The only one getting screwed over here is her. Because sure, today she saved $25. But in the future, I'm never going to work for her again. I'm not going to forget what she looks like. I have her phone number. I know what car she has. Even if she gets rid of the car, I'm just not going to forget what she looks like, okay? I'm going to put her phone number down as do not answer. And that's it. I'm never going to work for her again. So, you saved $25 today by shorting me, but you lost a good mechanic, a honest person that's not going to sell you a radiator when your car needs a head gasket. Okay? And let's be real, people who drive these piece of crap cars, they get rid of them, and chances are they're gonna go out and get another piece of crap car that's also going to need work done to it. Well, when you get your next car, I'll make sure to not answer any of your calls or your texts, and you could take your car somewhere else to get fixed, and maybe they could sell you parts you don't need. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I said, I could not care less about the $25, but it's unfortunate because I have to deal with people like this all the time. It's not the first time it's happened to me, and I could see it coming from a mile away. It's like the body language, it's how they're acting or what they're doing when they're trying to give you the money. You could just tell that they are not acting right, and you just get that feeling that they're not giving you the right amount of money and they're trying to short you. And it's never worth creating drama over it. So you know what? You saved a few bucks, but yeah, you lost someone that's gonna work on your car. So next time, take your car somewhere else. Alright, so it's been maybe about an hour since I shot or recorded that last video, and I actually get a call from the woman, okay? And I know I said I wasn't gonna answer, but I'm like, hey, maybe she's calling to say, oh my god, I gave you the wrong amount, blah blah blah, right? No, she called me, I answered, she was like, hi, is this the junkyard? And I was like, no, this is Jonathan. As soon as she heard my voice, she just hung up the phone call. It's like she's well aware of what she did. I just thought it was so funny. Oh my god, these people.